but he's able to makes it.
Win anything. Sam, defend your team, because they haven't won.
Oh my God.
Strap yourselves in, it's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Press 4 to Defuse. I'm back from the Euro lands, so I'm back into action. We got Paul here as well. And Paul, I hope you're looking forward to explaining to me what the hell has happened while I've been away.
Yeah, Sam picked a really good week to be gone too, right? You two just bouncing back and forth on your spiritual journeys. I got to be the one to batten down the hatches, hold down the fort, while you two are off to bigger, better, greener pastures, I guess.
Someone's got to be reliable here. And that's apparently your role. But we've got a lot of action going on. Some rosters that are a little less than reliable. Some changes. Some shenanigans, shall we say. Looking at you, 100 Thieves. We'll be getting into that in just a few moments here. But let's go ahead and get into our first segment here. It's called Run It Back, and it's brought to you by Temple University, where we're going to present the news from the last week and talk about it a little bit. Here's the first thing. Just a little palette teaser, get you into the news. I wanted to start out. I couldn't start out with the big steak here, the big meaty part. Knights have an academy roster. Academy rosters continue to be all the rage, especially for the teams that are in VCT. How we feel about another academy team here?
I like a lot of the players on it, so I'm for it. And this has been the Knights Academy roster for a while. I'm going to be honest, I thought they were already fully signed when this tweet came out. I was a little bit confused yesterday seeing it because I thought they were already signed, but now you know that they're absolutely signed. And, you know, Adder, Leak, Massive Grinders, love to see them succeed, get signed to a roster. I'm also partial myself to Pure VNS. Once upon a time, he played on a collegiate team, so that is always going to get me favor with a player like that. Really great player, too. So, cool.
Yeah,
I mean, that's pretty much it.
I see Mr. Seaside, Mr. Keith LaFortune is coaching it as well, which is nice to see. It was a very handy logo there. I like it. This is our intro video, I guess. But yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be an interesting squad to watch. We'll see how they could do. Obviously, Knights, you know, performing quite well. I'd say the Knights right now as a roster are getting the best results in the history of that team existing.
Sure.
So
and the
Academy
the Academy roster has had some pretty decent results in like weeklies and some of the smaller like third-party tournaments, right? Like they did pretty all right in YFP yesterday. I think they made quarters, if I'm remembering correctly.
That sounds
and then got knocked out by like the second place team. So like, good for them.
All right, moving on in our news. Next bit of news coming through: Gen G minus Kusta. Kusta is gone. Fun fact: back to little CS. He's hooked up with Daps over on his CS roster to return to that game, I suppose. So yeah, I mean, Kusta's been with the Gen G organization for years. Actually, was on their CS team before making the transition over to Valorant. Yeah, he's gone. He's out. Thoughts, Paul?
I mean, I definitely feel like this is one of the more staple Gen G players, so it was surprising in that sense to see Kusta being the change made to Gen G, but it also makes sense for Gen G to start to restructure their team a little bit. I'm surprised that this is the only change that we've gotten thus far from Gen G. Just because I don't feel like they've done very well in a rather long time. It's been, what, like 6 to 8 months since Gen G has been a team to actually watch out for.
Wonder what decision and move that coincided with.
But I'm interested to see who they end up getting to fill in for Kusta there. They said that they're going to be trialing players. Like during YFP, they had Jerk in, who I really like Jerk as a player. The performance was a little bit rough for Gen G as a squad. I wonder if that was like Jerk just getting subbed in last minute, if they're going to trial Jerk more, or if they're going to have like a revolving door. So I'm curious as to what the system is there, but excited to see Gen G making moves.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I haven't heard the most encouraging things about Kusta's, shall we say, work ethic. I think he's a player who was criticized for not necessarily doing a whole lot outside of the bare minimum in scrims and that kind of thing. Not someone who really loved the game and was, you know, into grinding it and that kind of stuff. And I can understand different systems work for different players, but especially for a player who, you know, made the transition over from CS, like there's a certain amount of time you need to put in to improve, and I don't know that was necessarily the case. So I think that he had a certain level of individual impact and individual skill, and the talent's obviously there. But even for the environment of a team, removing somebody who isn't necessarily putting in 100% is a good thing, just because you set the standard that like that's not acceptable, that you can't coast and get by. And I think that this is a team that kind of needs that tempo set. They need a little bit of I don't know, discipline, command, something, some sort of kick in the ass, because they have really been just kind of coasting for a while.
And, you know, especially with Kusta being like one of the veteran presences on the team, right? You want your veteran presence to set an example. And I can't speak obviously to whether or not he was able to have like a strong work ethic or not. I don't know, but either way, was at the very least the veteran presences weren't putting up like extremely strong performances, and that's never going to go well for a team that hasn't seen many roster changes in a while. So it's just a good direction for Gen G.
It'll be curious to see if they continue to make changes or whether they're just going to incrementally swap players, which has sort of been their approach as long as this roster has existed.
There are no
right?
100 Thieves.
Yeah, I mean, yes. Yeah, we'll get into that.
We'll get to that later.
In just a minute. But no. Yeah, they've sort of done these incremental changes, one piece here, one piece there, swapping around, trying to find that magic formula. But it does feel like they've cooled off a lot lately. We'll see. We'll see. Next bit,
true.
this is obviously very much in your wheelhouse, right? Scholastic expand into Valorant. Talk to me about the collegiate scene.
I am so happy. I am so happy that Riot is getting into it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, obviously I love the collegiate scene. I spend a ridiculous amount of time going like parsing through collegiate tournaments and looking at all the best teams and everything. But there's too many tournaments. There's too many leagues in collegiate Valorant right now. You know,
Okay.
I could name probably 15 off the top of my head. UGC, NECC, AVGL, CF1, ECAC. I could just keep going.
You're making
There's
up
too
letters
many.
now. You're making up letters.
Right? They're all like 3 to 4 letter acronyms. That's the fun part too. But
Everybody wants to be the NCAA, and let me just say, you don't want to be the NCAA, man. It's not
That's
a
true.
good goal to set
Even they
yourself.
Even they don't. But it's good to see, like, from the sound of this, it seems like Riot is going to be like putting on their own events, right? Like first party events is what they say at the very bottom of that. So I'm excited to have like a centralized college league. Now that being said, I don't want to see all of the third party tournaments like collapse just because Riot is now where every good team ends up, right? There are a lot of really good orgs, a lot of people who have been putting in a lot of work to get collegiate Valorant off the ground while Riot's been busy, you know, dealing with their tier 1 scene. So I'd like to see some sort of like integration or at least consultation with a lot of the people who have boots on the ground and are familiar with the collegiate scene.
I mean, this is always going to be the reality of a developer-controlled IP, right?
Yeah,
it's like
exactly.
you could build whatever you want, and then if they decide that they're going to get in, tough shit.
Very
right?
true.
That's the really scary part for most organizers about getting involved. That's why you haven't seen certain organizers touch it, really, or have sort of like poked it and been like, maybe not. But I will say, Riot's done a really good job of working with third parties in terms of like the Knights and Nerd Street in the professional scene. So maybe they'll do a good job of that in the collegiate. Still, more money for the players, mo better.
Exactly. And there's a lot of good talent in collegiate Valorant. Anybody who's like watching YFP yesterday or has been watching the Nerd Streets, you'd probably have seen Zero Marksman Silver. That's 4/5 of a collegiate roster. FIU Gold was basically most of that team last semester, and FIU Gold wasn't even the best collegiate team. They were good, but not the best collegiate team by a pretty decent margin. So there's a lot of really good teams and players in collegiate.
That's pretty sick. I mean, I think that this is sort of like an ideal for most of the esports ecosystem, that there's this ideal point to get to where going to college and competing is a viable alternative to just going pro. And then like there's a pipeline from post-college into competition. I know in CS that really doesn't exist. It's pretty tricky to get involved later in life if you're not grinding as a wee little babe. But I mean, there are players who make the transition. Just collegiate is nowhere close to the level of competition as higher levels, though that is changing. So it'd be cool to see a little bit more of that natural pipeline, because you don't want people sacrificing opportunities and education and whatnot to chase the grind. Because for every player that it works out for, there are 10 players who waste a huge amount of time and get
50 players.
Yeah,
There's
really.
50 players who waste a bunch of time and don't get anything for it. And it's cool too. Like the response has been really neat. I've seen a lot of players on Twitter just being like, "Oh, Riot's getting into collegiate. Maybe I stop doing pug teams, like a different pug team every 2 months, and get on a collegiate roster and grind that out." And I know that there are a lot of organizations that are offering like big scholarships, and a couple big colleges who have stayed out of collegiate Valorant that are now looking into it, right? Like Maryvale and Harrisburg were both posting on their Twitter, maybe it's time we get a Valorant roster. Those are two huge esports programs. So it's really cool for Riot to get involved, and I think it's going to be really good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, definitely good. Definitely good. All right, well, we'll have to see how that turns out. Now it's time.
Oh, boy.
For the goofing, the shenanigans, the 100 Thieves. First off, let me just preface this by saying, what the hell, guys? What the hell, 100 Thieves? I know you got 13 0'd. What the hell is this, though?
Mike,
okay.
All I can think of is, have you seen the show Community?
Yes.
Have you seen, you know, the GIF where it's like the one guy's coming back with pizza and the apartment's on fire and everything's going crazy? That's you coming back from Europe this week, back to NA. Oh my!
I am Troy with the pizza. wondering what the hell just happened to
Exactly.
100 Thieves. So let's talk about what actually happened for anyone who's been under a rock and hasn't seen the news. You can see the tweet here. They cut Baby J and Eccles after like 4 games played with the roster, 2 games played with the roster in VCT. Was it just 2?
2 games, 5 maps.
Oh, Jesus Christ. And
Yeah.
they have announced 2 stand-ins, Bang and JC Stani, which, fine, whatever. We'll talk about them later. That's less the issue. But let's talk about this. Let's just put down a timeline here. Speaking of which, if you want a timeline of 100 Thieves shenanigans in Valorant, there's a great one on nerdstreet.com. Brian assembled that. This 100 Thieves roster, they bench Steel, right? Who was doing a lot of the calling, so that Nitro could IGL entirely. Nitro then watches the CS major and goes, oh, shit, I missed that game. He's back on Team Liquid in CS. He leaves. So suddenly they don't have an IGL. They're like, let's go to Europe. Let's go pick up this Eccles guy. He seems well-liked. By the way, let's just point out, Eccles he's not a fragger. He's not a fragger, right? No one thinks he's a fragger. He was removed from his previous roster, the Liquid team, because he didn't have the fragging power. So if you're going out and you're intentionally getting him, you're getting this guy to be an IGL, to install a system, to call the game. You're not getting him to pop off on the server. Then they signed Baby J as well. Promising talent. A lot of people are really excited about Baby J's possibility. You saw the reaction to this was like, I can't wait till someone actually uses Baby J properly. Like, there's a lot to be excited for there. Okay. All right. You sign this roster. You bring Eccles over from fucking Europe and get visas sorted out and everything, which is a pain in the ass to do. It is so expensive to get player visas and so difficult. And now Eccles is in a situation where if they ever release him, his visa is no longer valid unless he finds a new team. So that's a whole other level of fuckery. You bring him over. You go through all the trouble of getting him into the country. You have maybe a month of scrims because they were scrimming with Eccles in Europe before that. Month maybe of scrims. You play 2 matches against good teams, by the way.
You play the best team in NA and the most upcoming team in NA.
Yeah, the best team in NA, the most upcoming team. The guard, the best team in NA.
Yeah, the guard is the...
I know. I know what you mean. Cloud9 and the guard. You play 2 really good teams, and yes, you lose. But, and I get they got 13 out of 1 map. That's embarrassing. Don't get me wrong. That's embarrassing. But it happens. It happens to great teams even. Sometimes you get wrecked. And then they just panic button.
Yep.
Just panic button. Just blow up the whole roster.
I am glad that whoever is in charge of the Valorant roster for 100 Thieves does not have access to the nuclear codes. Because they love hitting that big red button, dude. They just love hitting it at this point.
Here's all I'm saying, right? To me, this means whoever whatever your decision-making process is for this roster, you have no faith in. Because you made this decision, and then you immediately, after seeing 2 results, torched it. So here's what I'm saying to 100 Thieves. Whoever makes the decisions about your Valorant roster, if they're going to abandon this decision so quickly, they got to go too. Right? Like, if you're saying this was a complete fuck-up, I can't believe we signed these guys, we're not even going to give this time, we're just going to abort, fire whoever made that decision. That's like if you're the GM of a football team and you sign a guy off the street who can't do like, you're getting fired. Like, this is, the buck stops with whoever makes this roster call.
Man.
And if it's one of the players, what the hell? Because apparently Ethan's saying that it was him motivating the decision. He's going to be calling now, which is just like, I don't know, maybe it'll work, but I don't think it will. If Nadeshot is literally interfering directly in his teams to make these roster decisions, like, don't.
And that's the thing, right? And, you know, Nadeshot did put out, like, the whole, like, video that same day, right? Like, his sort of, like, press release, detox, whatever you want to call it, right? Where he breaks down and he says, like, I know this seems like a knee-jerk reaction, but it isn't. It's
that video made me think
thing.
He was fucking...
And, you know, he says, like, this wasn't, like, an instantaneous, like, reaction into the 13-0. Right? But then you look at his Twitter the night before and he's like, this is just an unacceptable loss. And the next day they're cut and we can't figure out why. And Baby J and Eccles both said that they felt super blindsided. Baby J was supposedly locked into a 3-year contract. 3-year.
And
right?
now he's in contract
And
jail, motherfucker.
he was on it for barely a month.
Woo!
So
Contract
what,
jail.
What is going on there? I get Nate Shot said he wants to win, right? Like that's the goal behind 100 Thieves at all times, is that they want to win. But you need a plan to win. You need to be able to adjust that plan when it inevitably goes wrong, and not just throw darts at a board and hope that eventually you get a bullseye blind shooting.
This also speaks to, you remember when this roster was announced and we were talking about this roster, and I think it was it might have been the 3 traditional hosts, or it might have been Anderson as well. We were talking about all the things that could go wrong, and I think I talked about it where ultimately the way this team functions and the way this team has seemed to function since its inception is the players do have some degree of calling the shots, right? Like, Hiko is clearly a massive influence within this team. He built this roster around himself originally, right? Like, he is a massive voice within this team. Ethan is also another guy who has massive authority. And then Asuna is another, pop-off player at this point who's established. So, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in the internals, but if you brought in Eccles to call and lead this roster, and he was trying to enforce and lead this roster, and the other players weren't buying in, then yeah, that's a problem. But that's not necessarily a problem with Eccles.
Exactly, right? Well, and even if you argue it's a problem, like they want a different IGL because Eccles style, once they actually got all in the same place and they weren't scrimming and they were playing actual like official matches, Eccles style didn't work for them. Okay, that is barely almost acceptable, right?
Yeah.
To like, okay, we didn't like the IGL style. But what was wrong with Baby J? He wasn't calling, was he?
No.
So why are we cutting both of the new players? Baby J had pretty good performances on those maps, right? I mean, arguably, I would say one of the reasons that they almost brought it back on Haven against the Guard was because Baby J really turned up on the attacking side. Or was it defending side? Either way, for 100 Thieves, right? No, it was attacking. It was 100% attacking.
Yep.
Right? Baby J ended up having a really good performance. And then, we were going to talk about this later, but I guess I'll just bring it up now. Split was a really great map for them. It was just like a comp diff on Ascent that totally screwed them. Like, was that Echo's strong arming? like a bad composite? I don't understand. I simply do not understand what could have gone so horribly wrong in so little time and this wasn't seen coming at all by anyone who was making a decision on the team.
I see people in chat saying that there was a conflict of personalities between him and Hiko. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. But
even still, man, it's bad when TSM is making less rash decisions and better decisions than you as an org, right? Because TSM, when they failed to qualify for VCT, they had a similar press release. They were like, hey, this isn't the culture. This isn't the synergy that we want out of our team. But they didn't just nuke the new players on their roster. They got everybody together. They said, all right, time to grind. And they're actually looking incrementally better now versus 100 Thieves who have somehow fallen below the TSM line, which is not great.
To me, it just speaks to really poor vision and decision making, which I feel like so many teams suffer from, where everything's just like, I don't know, this name seems good. Put him in there. Oh shit, he didn't work. Put in a different name. Shit, that one didn't work. Put in a different name. And it's like, yeah. Isn't this the point of trialing players? Man, isn't the point of trialing players to make sure there's going to be a personality mesh and the team's going to work out, and then you sign them to 3-year contracts? No, apparently not. Apparently not.
Thing, right? Like their scouting must be a nightmare at this point for 100 Thieves, right?
What scouting?
Like, I don't know what their scouting routine is,
Twitter. But
you can say it's definitely it's definitely not working, whatever it is, right? So they need to get that sorted too. Also, who would ever want to sign with 100 Thieves now, right?
Like, I mean, it's still 100 Thieves.
It's still 100 Thieves, sure, but
If you have
It's
any
getting-
foresight and you're not already complete boys with the other 3 players in the roster, it is a risky signing to do for sure. In terms of, and no one should sign a contract longer than a year with them. That I will
Exactly.
say.
Exactly.
This is pretty clear. If you sign anything longer than a year, you're asking for trouble after this indication. Frankly, a 6-month contract might make more sense for both sides. But holy cow.
At this point, they need to get their scouting routine in, right? Because no player who's already established and is going to... If you have multiple offers, 100 Thieves is probably going to be on the bottom of your list, right? Like, if you're a player who gets cut from another org and you're really good still, 100 Thieves is... And you get offers from...
Yeah.
And the stipulation here is, and you get offers from other viable, like, teams. You're not choosing 100 Thieves at this point because you're worried about the management structure. Now, for players who don't have multiple offers, 100 Thieves is still a really attractive opportunity because, like you said, it's 100 Thieves. But that means 100 Thieves need to actually look into scouting newer talent and not just going with whatever names they can recycle through their roster this week.
What I will say is, again, it's still 100 Thieves. It's still got the clout. It's still got the cred. It's still got the hip merch and the hot streamers signed to it and a presumably incredibly competitive contract. So players are still going to sign with them, right? And players are, by and large, remarkably short-sighted. And also, by and large, pretty young, right? You don't have perspective. You don't have the foresight. You don't look at that and go, this could be me. You look at that and go, that won't be me. I'm the best player to ever touch the game. Like, I'm hot shit. They'll never bench me. So I more things will happen for sure. Like, players will go to them. You already see Bang and JC Stani in, right? Obviously, they're the
on
players
loan.
trialing. Yeah, but if 100 Thieves buys them out, they're gonna go.
Yeah. Well, and this is another situation where, like, it's one of those things where for times like now, for players like Bang and JC Stani who were once like on tier 1 orgs and then kind of got relegated to the tier 2 scene, obviously 100 Thieves coming back and saying, hey, do you want to be on a big boy team again? That's super attractive, and you're going to take that deal. And honestly, good luck to Bang and JC Stani, because I feel like they're going to need it. It's not, there's nothing wrong with a player accepting a contract from 100 Thieves from like a you should never do that kind of standpoint.
No, just be careful.
But yeah,
yourself.
be careful. Make sure you have a lawyer read that contract 15 times.
Make sure you got outs. Make sure you got outs. Make sure you're not going to be stuck in contract jail for forever. Because this, you spend a year on the bench. Suddenly, no one knows who you are. Go ask Dicey.
And that's what they did to Dicey.
Yep.
Right.
Go ask Dicey.
Dicey was on the bench for months.
They will keep you in contract jail forever if they don't get buyouts. Yeah.
And how are you going to buy out from 100 Thieves, man? Right. Like, who's going to pay that?
That's how it works.
Man, if only, dude.
What I will say is, as far as players to pivot to, Bang and JC Stani aren't the worst in the world, right? They're interesting names. It's just like now so just to put it in context again for anyone who's not aware, because they lost their first 2 matchups, 100 Thieves pretty much need to reverse sweep the rest of their games. They have to win all of their other games for a chance to make playoffs, I believe.
Pretty close. I think they can. Technically speaking, I think they can drop 1 more because it's top 4 out of 6 make playoffs. But then you're talking about like 100 Thieves coming out of that group in 4th, which oof. I mean, it's a very competitive group. I'd argue it's the harder of the 2 groups by a wide margin, but still.
Yeah. I also see somebody in chat. Obviously, a lot of people have opinions on this. I see somebody in chat saying Dicey was living the dream, bench for a year, got paid for the same. I don't know specifically his contract. Usually, bench players do not make their full salary. In most organizations, in most contract situations, bench players make a percentage of their salary. Some of them are very friendly. Some of them are really not. I know people have been set on the bench making below a living wage because it's 50% of their contract, and their original contract was fine, but half of it was not fine. And then they can't do other things. It can be bad for players.
And even, I mean, obviously there's the argument where, getting that bag and you don't even have to do work, but a lot of these players want to play. That's the point, right? Is that they want to play. They want to prove that they're the best. So to be stuck on a bench, whether you're collecting money for it or not, I mean, it's not as good as being on the main roster and collecting money for it and actually getting to play, no matter how you slice it.
And especially if you're a young player who hasn't necessarily fully established themselves yet, but has had some hot prospects. Like we've seen it all the time with the way orgs pick players up. The guy who's hot for that last month suddenly gets signed to a big contract. But the guy who hasn't played in 6 months, you're going to need someone who's been thinking pretty hard about the game to be interested in pulling you back in. Or are you going to have to go to a different team and build up some of that rep again? It's a problem for sure. But anyway, we're going to move on now. Kind of. We will say
we'll double back a little bit later, but for now
we will definitely be talking about this later. VCT NA group stage 2 week 2 results. Yeah, let's dive into this. I was away, so Paul, the hell happened?
A lot. Where do you want to start? Because there is quite a bit to parse through.
Just do quick hits. Let's do quick hits. What do we got first here?
Okay,
LG beat EG, the battle of the Gs.
Perfect.
Who was the OG?
We're starting off with probably the least impactful game, standing wise, right? We're gonna ease our way into it. Honestly, I mean, it was a good game. It was pretty close between these two. It was fun to watch. But you know, at the end of the day, EG and LG are still looking like they're both going to be bottom of this group. Unless 100 Thieves just completely collapses, then maybe one of them gets out and then gets probably slapped in first round playoffs. So there's still a long way to go, I think, for LG and EG in terms of just firepower, which can be a really difficult margin. Like if it was like coordination or something like that, I think it would be a little bit easier, but I just don't know if they have the same kind of stopping power as you know, a lot of these big orgs like C9, Guard, XSET in their group.
Speaking about C9 XSET, that's a pretty spicy matchup. The 2-1 goes for Cloud9. They continue the rampage to be the best team in North America. How are we feeling about that?
This might be a hot take. I'm going to be honest. I only really enjoyed watching the third map of that series. The other two, it just felt like pick ban differential. Because it was like a 13-7 like both ways. Both team taking their map pick. Icebox was a really good game. Icebox was a really good game, I will say. Zekken and Leaf both had insane performances on that match. And it was really interesting too to see like the different compositions. Icebox is becoming a map that I'm disliking less in terms of a viewing experience, just because a lot of teams tried different flavors there. And it was really interesting to see. It was interesting to see C9 put Mitch on the chamber role. Honestly, I didn't expect Mitch to be a person that they sort of slotted in there. A lot of teams are like trying to put chamber in, but like subbing in their Jet on Icebox for it. And it's had varied results, but I think C9 had a really good concept of how they wanted to approach this map. And with like KO on their lineup too, they were able to shut down like a lot of Zekken's utility. It was a really good third map.
All right. I like it. I'm into it. Talk to me about my beautiful boys, the Guard. 13-0, 100 Thieves, literally obliterating their roster. MCE clowning on them on Twitter afterwards.
Bro, that's so
I didn't
funny
watch the
in
match,
retrospect,
but
man.
God, did I enjoy the aftermath.
Bro, MCE going on Twitter afterwards and being like, hey, if you want a consultation, I'm available. And then the next day, 2 players are dropped. And MCE had nothing to do with it, guys.
His literal response to that was, wait, this wasn't it. This wasn't the consultation.
It's so funny, dude. It's so funny. It was interesting, though, because that's the first, like, growing pains we've seen for the Guard in, like, a big context. And that's the 100 Thieves were the first team to actually like make a big stand against the Guard on like the Guard's upward trajectory. 100 Thieves are meeting them at like the highest point thus far, still played a relatively close game, and then their roster exploded. But the Guard, I'll be honest, this was probably the least confident I've felt about the Guard in a while. Because a lot of the time when 100 Thieves were winning, it felt like it was more so the Guard losing. They had a really solid attacking side on Haven, right? But then totally flopped their defense, almost lost the map. Split was kind of a nightmare. They did not do great on their defending side. It was like a 6-6 half, which anybody, you know, you all watch Valorant, you know, Split is super defender sided. And then they didn't get a single round on the attacking side, which was super rough. And then 100 Thieves just, you know, shit the absolute bed on map 3 and had the dumbest comp I've ever seen in my entire life. And weren't able to do anything. So the guard 13-0s, and it looks really good. And admittedly, like, the players are still really great, right? Like, even though there were some rough rounds and some rough map or two, rough map and a half, I'll say, everybody on that team still popped off and had the exact performances we expect. Any one of those 5 players can clutch around out of nowhere. But this is, I think, the most nervous I've looked about the guard in a while, and it's made me question if they can beat teams like C9 and XSET as quickly as next week. I think there's still a lot of room for this roster to grow. So I have no doubt that, like, eventually they'll be contesting them, but how quickly can they get to that point?
I mean, they just had a win over XSET not that long ago, didn't they?
Did they?
Yeah.
I think that was in, like, a third-party tournament, though, and it was, like, right before VCT. So, you know, there's argument as to...
You're here with the Mickey Mouse tournaments now? You're going down
Mickey
that
Mouse.
rabbit hole?
No, but also, it's not... I don't expect... I don't... Look, there's a difference between calling something a Mickey Mouse tournament and expecting, like, Tier 1 VCT orgs to be throwing out their, like, best strats.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right.
In
I agree.
a tournament that isn't as important to them.
Just couldn't resist the chance for the jab.
Fair enough.
All right, next matchup. What haven't we talked about yet? Version 1, 2-1, 2-0 Rise. I don't think we need to linger on that too much. That's pretty
I just want to say one more time how good version 1 look. They, oh my god.
Xander's the truth.
There's not a single map that version 1 has played in the last 2 months that I haven't loved the way that they've looked. Admittedly, like, they've had, like, arguably an easier run in their group thus far. It only gets harder from here.
Hold on one sec. Someone just posted in chat that Mixwell's back in the GT roster. Is that...
Did they just announce that on Twitter?
It's not a troll. They just
announced that on Twitter?
Are you shitting me?
Wait,
Kellogg's is being moved to the bench and Mixwell's back in the roster? What are they gonna... Do they have these guys on a seesaw? Are they on it just sitting on a teeter-totter and one of them goes up and one of them goes down?
Bro, why aren't they trying them both at the same time at this point?
Maybe there's like a dramatic personality difference. Or, all right, next level thinking. Maybe it's like a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation, and actually Kellogg's and Mixwell are the same player.
I ain't never seen them in the same place at the same time.
Which personality is in control at that particular moment is which player they have in the roster. Holy shit, I can't believe they're actually doing this. Man,
I wish we had Sam on the show this week. She would be exploding. Oh, jeez.
Well, I can't wait to see how poorly that goes. Speaking of orgs that don't seem to know what the fuck they want, I mean, come on! Again, like, if you're just yo-yoing between these two players, right? Like, what's the long-term vision? What's the plan, man? What is the idea here?
The plan is
this feels like
Twitter interactions.
This feels like an NFL team that just keeps benching their quarterback for the other quarterback, right? Like, and they're like, it'll motivate them. It'll motivate them. Will it though? Or will it ruin both?
Valoranting's response.
That's pretty good. That's pretty quality.
I think that's how we all
memes.
feel at this point.
Shout out to Tyler for the memes.
Honestly, shout out. Just deadpan. I cannot believe that this is how we
I do want to give a shout out to Ashray Cannaboy, who's the one who posted that in chat first. So thanks for pointing that out, because wouldn't have caught that midway through this show. What? Just why? Wait, why?
Think about all the impressions they get now, Mike. Their Twitter game is on. Look, 100 Thieves hogged too much of the spotlight this week. G2 had to make a weird move.
Just gotta get weird with it. All right.
Oh man. Anyways, back to VCT NA, where things are totally normal all the time.
Trying to reset my brain after this one. Optic 2-0 NRG. Optic isn't Envy anymore. They're Optic now, but they're still good at the game. I
actually really like the Optic match. After a rough first week where they lost to Rise, I think that this was the Optic that we all wanted to see, right? It came out a week later than a lot of teams were hoping for, but you know, they kind of, them and Sentinels are in a similar boat right now, where I don't know how much they actually practiced over the break. I heard Sentinels didn't practice literally at all, except for like the week of leading up to VCT. So it's good to see like Optic get back in the feel of things, because I feel like they should be beating teams like Rise. They should be beating teams like NRG. And now the question for NRG is, right, like they've had 2 rough weeks of matches. almost beat Sentinels, not quite. And then Optic, they just got absolutely bodied by Optic, right? NRG is kind of like a mini guard in the sense where, like, since they made changes, they've had like a decent trajectory. It's not as steep as the guards, obviously, but I've really liked NRG shaping up over these last like 2 months. So, can they recover quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question is, right, like, what's the standard of expectation, right? Maybe you're not going to push the tippy top of VCT, but maybe if you're in that, fourth to sixth range, right? Like, that's pretty dang good. It's pretty dang good. Ain't nothing to sneeze at.
And I mean, looking at that group, the fifth place is pretty contended, right? I think Knights are going to end up in sixth in that group. I don't think that that's a controversial take to have, but Rise and NRG are sort of looking around the same tier-ish right now, right? Where they like have some good matches against the better teams, but I don't know if either one is ready to put consistent top NA performances out right now. And only one of them can make it out in theory, as long as, Sentinels, Optic, or version 1 don't drop the bag.
That's a big assumption, but yeah, no, assuming no one drops the bag.
True.
There's still a lot more Valorant to be played. Things can get weird. Let's talk about the preview for next week then. Let's talk about some of the matches that we got coming up here.
Sure.
First one, Cloud9 EG. EG is going to get slaughtered. Is that controversial to you, Paul?
Why would it be?
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
I think C9 could field 4 of their players and still slaughter EG.
That's controversial, but all right, I like it. All right.
I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration, but I don't think it's controversial to say that C9 should be expected to place at least top 2 in this group, probably top 1 considering they just beat XSET, right? And EG is on track to place last because they lost to LG, so that should be a slaughter of a game.
I think there's sort of 2 for me, like boutique matchups, like premier matchups here,
and they're on the same day, dude.
Yeah, I think that's the Guard XSET is going to be a banger. Obviously, we just talked about that. They both traded series with each other. XSET beat their Guard to send them down to the lower bracket in qualifying for VCT, and then the Guard beat the XSET in the NSG winter. So then this is going to be a really spicy matchup. Should be really cool. Whichever way it does split down, you're going to want to watch that. And then Sentinels OG, 2 of the very established rosters here, right? Two of the champs teams going up, duking it, pulling out their fisticuffs and seeing who's going to walk away with it. That's also going to be a banger matchup.
Well, and I feel like Sentinels Optic is going to tell us a lot about both those teams and how quickly that they can bounce back from not practicing as hard as a lot of these other teams have been, right? So, like I said earlier, Sentinels and Optic are in a similar boat right now, where I think either of these teams being anything less than first in North America is not acceptable for them, right? Like, just for their own sake. Both of these teams want to be, Knights obviously not pushing for first, right? If they don't get first, they're not gonna explode, right?
Yeah.
Getting to VCT was good enough for Knights. Exact opposite for Sentinels and Optic. Both these teams have been at the top of NA. They want to be back at the top of NA, and they've both looked kind of shaky. Not just in VCT these last 2 weeks, but they've looked consistently shaky over the last few months. Sentinels flamed out at Champions. Optic flamed out at Champions, right? Optic had a great performance, obviously, in Berlin, but then hasn't really done much since. And Sentinels have been wavering, more and more, I feel, over the past 8 months of Valorant. So, not only do Sentinels and Optic both want a win here, if it was a dominant win, they would feel so much more comfortable. And I honestly have no idea what's going to happen in that match. I have no idea. I'm just I'm excited for these teams to slug it out.
It should be really fun to watch. Should be a really good temperature check for both teams. And then I think there's one other big temperature check here, which is that 100 Thieves versus LG is going to be very watched.
Man, this shouldn't be a game that we care about, right?
We're going to care about it a lot, though.
This time last week, I would have said 100 Thieves demolishes LG, and I'm not that worried about it, even if they start 2-0. Now that's like a make or break match for 100 Thieves.
Yeah.
Right? You've just cut 2 massive players from your roster.
You're
You've
changing
subbed
the
people
IGL.
in. You've started this week with the phrase, "We are a team who wants to be winning." LG is not a team that they can be losing to. And I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a chance that they're going to lose to LG.
For pure chaos, I hope there's another 13-0.
Could you imagine?
Just for the memes.
Oh my
Just for the memes.
God.
But I mean, legitimately, like, there's so many
man.
question marks, right? You're bringing in 2 new players that you have no cam with, that you're just completely slotting in there with a week's
Yeah.
notice. They're playing tonight's games in the Pittsburgh Ignites tournament.
In the
'cause
next tournament, yeah.
God knows they need some damn officials under their belt. Also, you have a new caller. Ethan's calling for, I believe, the first time in his
A
career
lot of the
in
rules
any
are
game.
changing.
So,
Right?
like, yeah.
Hiko is apparently moving off of
Sova to
Sova.
Sentinels.
He's going to be going on to Sentinels now,
Yeah.
right? Like, Ostener is literally the only stable part of that roster at this point.
They're like just full on stirring the pot, mixing everything up.
Right?
And it's like,
And I feel like today with Knights tournament, like, you have a little bit of leeway, right? You've literally had this team for what, a day and a half. They should still make it out of groups, I'm pretty sure. If I look at their group, there's absolutely no one in their group that they should be losing to, even with like you know, how things work. Although it might be best of 1. I think it's actually best of 1, which makes things a little bit more tricky. But either way, like, regardless of what happens in the Knights Monthly this week, 100 Thieves cannot lose to LG. If they win, it doesn't mean anything. That's the worst part, right? They cannot lose, and a win gives me absolutely no more confidence in their roster.
I disagree with that. I think that
Really?
yeah, I think it depends on how the win comes through, right? I think
That's
it depends
fair.
on the
If
composition,
it's a dominant win,
how they
that's
look.
fine.
I think this is one of those games that you're going to pay close attention to how the team plays, regardless of the result, right? You're going to be looking at the at the VOD and looking at how the coordination team plays coming through, looking at what they're trying to do philosophically. So
Sure.
I actually disagree with that. I do think that the win, if they get the win, or a loss, will tell you a lot about how this team is
A
actually
loss is
functioning.
definitely going to tell you a lot.
But it's just you know, we don't you don't know. You don't know. So you really do have to see them play to get a sense of what they actually want to do, like what Ethan's philosophy is on the game, because we have not seen it yet. We have never seen it. So there's always going to be some philosophical differences when you have someone else calling, someone new calling. It's going to be really interesting to see what the hell they do.
Man, I
We'll
just
see.
really like how competitive VCT NA is. Right?
Yeah,
Like,
spicy.
I just love it. I love NA esports to be this competitive. Because, like, looking at these teams, right? These 12 teams, there's, 7 of them who want nothing less, who, like, for themselves, right? They won't accept it themselves. They want nothing less than being first team in NA, right? Like, Guard, C9, Xset, 100 Thieves, Sentinel, OG, even V1, actually. All of those teams want to be the first place team in NA, and only one of them can be. Oh, man. And, like, a lot of them can contest for that. Maybe not 100 Thieves. We'll see how this week goes. But a lot of the others can contest for that, right? God, we have such good Valorant in NA.
It really is interesting. The drama, the
So
storylines
excited.
are phenomenal. Shout outs to Nate
Absolutely.
Shot for making them even more ridiculous this week. You may not know what you're doing with the roster, but damn, do you know how to create a storyline, my guy?
That is always true.
So yeah, drama out the wazoo.
Jeez.
Let's see how it goes. We will have to see how it goes. Let's talk about the YFP Winter Classic, because that
Sure.
did just happen. A good event for TSM. They finally won something. It's been a long time.
TSM then went to Twitter and started clowning on the tournament that
Which
they
is
won.
like, come on, guys. You
So
finally won something. Don't belittle the tournament you won. Like,
I
this
will
is the best result you've had in ages.
I will say, like, this is, like, as weird as this bracket is, because, like, why are Gen.G, TSM, T1, and FaZe all on the same side of the... I mean, TSM kind of did it to themselves. They ended up second, in their group, right? Because of a loss to Zero Marksman Silver. Again, best of ones, really cool. But, like, I don't know how Gen.G, T1, and FaZe Clan all ended up on the same side of the bracket, and there's nobody really on the TSM Academy is the biggest org on the other side, right?
Yeah.
So, like, weird.
Bubble
But
boy.
it gives TSM the most legitimate possible run through this bracket, and I feel like this, like, if you're a TSM fan, you have the biggest smile on your face right now compared to, like, the last 8 months of being a TSM fan, right? They beat every team you could possibly want. They beat all 3 of the other big orgs and then beat the team that came out the other side of the bracket in what was mostly a dominant win. The first map was a little rough for TSM to get their feet under them, but the other 2 maps were very one-sided in TSM's favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's just super encouraging to see them take down 3 established orgs, including T1, who obviously we had the whole help sewer shenanigans against TSM
real
previously.
quick, I see someone in the chat saying they all ended up on the same side because they all lost first round. I believe that is inaccurate. I'm pretty sure
if they all lost first round, if they all lost first round, they wouldn't all end up on the same.
I'm pretty sure TSM came out of their group second, Gen G came out of their group first.
Yeah.
T1 came out of their group first, and FaZe came out of their group first. So, like I said, TSM, fair enough. They came out of their group second. They were going to end up in a hard first-round matchup. I don't know why Gen G, T1, and FaZe Clan, who all came out of their group first, are all on the same side. I mean, there are eight groups, but how did a tournament organizer not think to themselves, is this how this should seed? Is this how this should work?
Yeah. Little odd.
Definitely odd.
I don't know.
Definitely
we'll see.
odd. But basically this tournament turned up being if you're a TSM fan, you can, I mean, I don't know if you're rejoicing, but you're at least breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of gelling going on. There's something positive for this roster.
As much as I like to clown on TSM because it's funny,
it is very fun.
Legitimately, I think they're headed a good direction. They looked significantly better. They didn't pull 100 Thieves and just cut their roster when things went wrong, right? I think things are going on the upward trend for TSM. So I'm excited to see if they can keep that.
I'll be really interested to see when they get to a tournament where they consider there to be pressure, because clearly they didn't in this tournament with the way they were behaving on Twitter. So one of the things that's always haunted this roster has been the big moments, the big pressure moments. So for me, I think that in this entire, not able to be in VCT season, they need to continue to have really good results in these third-party tournaments to then build confidence headed into the next VCT cycle. I think that's to my eyes the objective here if you're TSM. The individual wins maybe don't matter as much, but the way you're winning them matters.
Totally
and
agree.
That's what you're looking to do. So yeah, could be really exciting. Could be signs of life for this roster. We'll move on here. We'll slide on through. Bubble Boy, by the way, nice job.
Yeah,
good name.
Shout out.
Get that boba.
That is a good name, isn't it?
Knights Monthly is tonight. That's pretty exciting. Let's talk about the Knights Monthly. 100 Thieves are obviously playing. We've talked about it at a couple different points already here. They need the dang officials, and they're up against 3 teams that you'd never heard of. So, I mean, if they drop anything to any of these teams,
it's not a great look, is it? I mean, again, best of 1 format, right? For group stages. So that's always a caveat. We saw TSM lost their first best of 1 in YFP and then won the whole tournament, right? Because best of 3s are just a completely different animal than a best of 1. Best of 1, you can end up on a map where you're uncomfortable, or maybe they have some weird niche strat you've never seen and just get completely side rolled, right? But there's no reason that 100 Thieves shouldn't be getting out of that group, even if they lose a single best of 1. And honestly, anything less than a... Let's see, who else is in this? TSM is in this. That'll actually, if we get 100 Thieves TSM matchup, I think that'll be really interesting.
That should be fun.
Renegades is in this tournament. Andbox, too. I wasn't even aware Andbox still had a full 5 roster. Oh, no, they do. They totally do. That's right. It's just been a sec since we've seen them.
Yeah, they played with that.
Yeah, they actually have a pretty good team, too.
It's a lot of the LG roster, isn't it?
The old LG roster.
On that squad.
Complexity's in here, T1's in here again, right? So some fairly important teams. I think T1 is definitely a team that needs to recover from some rough last month between getting memed on Twitter after their DQ from the first qualifier to not making it through is still a pretty big org to just getting kind of demolished well, not really demolished, but definitely solidly beaten by TSM yesterday.
Big fan of huge ass construction. As a team.
Aren't we all? How
Just
can
a
you
big
not be a
fan.
fan of huge ass
Like
construction?
Huge Ass. He's a stand-up gentleman, and his construction company
Honestly.
just they build some solid things. Really,
He's got
really
good workman's comp.
build everything like a brick house, if you know what I mean. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see how these teams come out of it. I think that's gonna wrap up our show here, Paul. You got anything last you wanna bring up before we move on down?
We finished on time for once. Oh
Hey,
man, how did we
yeah.
manage to do that?
5 minutes before the
Amazing.
hour of our one-time half-hour show. That's since definitely become an hour show. Look at us. Look at us.
Yeah, I mean, not too much that we haven't already covered, right? Excited to a degree for Knights.
Wait,
Definitely
Danny-
excited for VCT.
Danny
this
just
week.
said
Huh?
Drone is playing in this tourney with Dark Zero. I'm suddenly intrigued. I'm a big Drone
Really?
stan. Yeah, big
That's
Drone
actually
stan.
really cool. I'm super excited. When was the last time Drone played?
A long time ago. He's been.
Was it when he was on TSM?
Yes, it was.
Wow.
All right, that's sick. Thank you,
It'll be
Danny,
interesting
for
to see
bringing
what
that to
role
my
he's on
attention.
too for Dark Zero.
Big Drone fan. He was
intrigued by that.
he was the piece when he got cut that I didn't understand. Yeah.
Any info if the tourney will be streamed? It's a Knights tourney, so I imagine it'll
Yeah,
be
it should be
streamed.
streamed. Should be
They
streamed.
generally have 8 million streams.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure you can find their streams on VLR or the Knight's Twitter. We'll probably
if you go to the Knights Twitter, I'm fairly certain I saw a talent announcement. So I don't know why you would have talent if it's not being streamed. So it definitely will. Don't have that link on hand right now, but definitely.
Yeah,
and then VCT starts up
search
again
them
this
up on Twitter.
Friday. Friday matches are all right. You make sure y'all are tuned in Saturday. Saturday is the day.
And I know this is a Valorant podcast, but I am Katowice is going on right now, and that's some incredible FPS gaming. So just for the sake of esports in general, you should watch at least the finals of that. It's going to be a banger. That's my plug. That's my plug. But no, watch VCT, and obviously we'll see you next week. I don't think I'm here for that episode, but these two characters, this character,
At
and
least
the
I'll
other
be
character,
here. Who knows what's
will
going
be
on
here.
with these two at this point?
Yeah, we'll be flying the coop. There will be a show next week, so tune in 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you then. Good night, everybody.